Hey guys, so this is what if Invincible was in Young Justice Part 2. Now, this time, I'm actually going to be scripting this. I'm not really going to be scripting it, because I already memorized my script, and I might mess up in there, but yet again, it's going to be way better than Part 1. Part 1, I stuttered a lot on Part 1, and that was mainly because my first month of doing what ifs, so I was kind of rusty, but basically I've gotten better, and that's why I waited so long to do part 2. Now, part 3 will be coming out shortly after I upload my other what ifs I have ready, or I have, I have made schedule times to, record them. So yeah, let's get into it, guys. So basically, this is what if Invincible was in Young Justice. Now, last left off when Invincible was captured after pretty much almost seemingly saved the day, knocking out Superboy, but being pretty much quickly dispatched before he can fly out of the building alongside his other compatriots, or the other team. And basically, they were suspended in pods, so it would be 4 pods instead of 3. And basically, Invincible's pod would be bigger than the other ones because it would mainly be focused on basically being Kryptonian proof. It basically being about the same type of durability as Superboy's cell, making the cell very durable and basically making the cell pretty much constantly pumping kryptonite. Now, kryptonite gas, and like every time kryptonite gas went into the pretty much pod, the kryptonite gas went back into the compressor that was in the pod and went back and forth. So that they never put in new Kryptonian gas. It's just reused it over and over again. Basically, since Vultramites are similar to Kryptonians, but don't have the same weaknesses, Kryptonite gas doesn't work at all on Invincible, but they don't know that. So basically, Invincible looks around and basically seeks his friends and him. Pretty much, they're getting electrocuted and getting pretty much electrified. Them trying to get answers. Now the light tells Baxter to basically just kill them and reclone them and give them back to the League of Justice, or the Justice League. Now basically, now we're gonna come off script a little bit. Basically, guys, last time I don't remember who I made Omni-Man kill. I think I made Omni-Man kill I think it was Guy Gardner. I think I made him kill Guy Gardner. So Guy Gardner would be in Young Justice, but he would be instantly, just murked by pretty much Invincible on a space mission, because Invincible would slowly take down semi-weak heroes, then move on to big heroes like Superman, and also Wonder Woman, and also the other heroes. So basically, Invincible would pretty much get electrified, and everybody would start to get tortured. But they would have eventually, come to terms and would have, talked Superboy into letting them go and to helping them escape. Now they would have been running out away from the pretty much light, or the pretty much, would have been running away from Katniss through the building. Now, eventually, Superboy would have led them to a vent. Basically, at first, Superboy and Invincible saying, "You led us to a dead end." So, going great. Pretty much not, was it Robin saying, "This is perfect." Pretty much them going through the vents. Now, Robin would have been hacking the motion sensors and making making Katniss following their Genos that were in the vents looking for the rest of the team. Now, basically, they would have gotten out of the vents and would have tried to escape. Now, they would have been running around, and Kid Flash would have been going ahead of everybody, running into a wall. Basically, pretty much shortly after, the rest of them looked that, the wall closed up pretty quickly, trying to keep them inside. Now, basically, pretty much, Invincible would have seen this, grabbing and telling Superboy to help him out. Basically, him trying to pull the door open. They would have started to pull the door open slightly harder and harder and farther, eventually them almost getting it open, but the rest of the Katniss pretty much squad showing up, stopping them midway. Now, they would have gone through the same door that they did originally, going up the stairs, or down the stairs, don't even know what, up the stairs. Basically, Superboy would have, stomped down the stairs, not letting the Genos follow them upstairs, and basically them going farther and farther up. Eventually, they would have ran into the other Genos, and the Genos would have been, well, knocked out the rest of the team, and would have talked to, well, Superboy. Now, Superboy would have said, I choose freedom. And basically, he would have had the same conversation with the Genos as an original. Now, eventually, they would have about to escape when basically, pretty much Blockbuster, or the scientists would have taken the Blockbuster serum and would have started to straight up just juke everybody. Now, he started to just fight everybody, and where they were pretty much on the upper level of the Katniss base, pretty much they were straight up just, being jumped or just straight up just them being fought down by Blockbuster. Now, he would have been grabbing Invincible and Superboy, seeing them as the biggest threats, basically him throwing Superboy all around the place and punching Invincible down to the ground. Now, Mark would have seen an opportunity as, Superboy was occupying pretty much Blockbuster. He would have grabbed Blockbuster from the arm, saying to go for it, and Superboy just straight up punching Blockbuster as hard as he can, making Blockbuster's ribs just crack instantly. Like both ribs on each side, his chest literally caved in. Pretty much Blockbuster couldn't breathe, and he started to pretty much, collapse and stuff like that. And basically, he started to get better and better, basically them seeing that the serum gave him a slight regeneration ability. Basically, they backed up, and Blockbuster got back up, punching both of them in the face, sending them flying separate ways. Now, Invincible would have flew up into the ground and would have torpedoed right through the ground and up towards pretty much, or right underneath Blockbuster, pretty much, well, drop kicking him right in his nards. Now, basically, he would have, coughed up, blood and would have fallen down to the ground. Basically, the force of, Invincible drilling down to the ground and going up, right up to, pretty much super punch, Blockbuster's nards. Basically, him pretty much hit the force going right through his body into his organs, and him coughing up blood. Now, Invincible would have grabbed Blockbuster and started to swing him around like a rag doll. Basically, Blockbuster getting back up and started to just grab Invincible and started to just punch him down to the ground multiple times over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Eventually, Invincible would have gotten up and would have grabbed Blockbuster's fist, saying, "That's enough," pretty much getting super angry. Kind of like what he did with the whole entire, Techno Head scene in Invincible. Basically, him jumping up into the ground, flying, and just flying straight through Blockbuster. No, he flew through him, instantly killing him. He flew right through him, flying down to the ground with blood all around his body. Now, basically, he would have flew up into the air and started to torpedo in one area and started to swirl around the air, making enough friction to basically wipe all the blood off of his suit. Basically, his goggles still being covered in blood, him just wiping them off of his hands. Now, basically, they would have been very shocked in how, anger, or like how much anger consumed Invincible. Invincible looked down to the ground and would have seen that the hole would not been fatal. It would have gone through pretty much some of his internal organs, but not enough to actually kill Blockbuster. Blockbuster was still breathing, and they were able to pretty much stop the bleeding, and Blockbuster wasn't dead, just yet. He was dying, though. So basically, they started to look around, and as Invincible was fighting Blockbuster, they started to break down pretty much pillars. They sprinted for it, and Blockbuster was dragged by the feet by Invincible. Them trying to get out the Rebel, and Invincible covering most of the team except Superboy, because Superboy was, half Kryptonian, so he can survive a Rebel. And basically, the building collapsed, and they came up through the ashes of the building. And basically, they looked around, and the Justice League would have shown up alongside Omni-Man. Omni-Man would have shown up, looking at his son, basically saying, "What is the meaning of this?" Now, but not really saying anything, but giving, Mark that look. Now, Mark would have been very, distraught. Basically, Robin winking at Invincible and pretty much, started to point at his back. Invincible looked at his back, seeing it was a chunk of flesh, and started to just, wipe it off. Now, the rest of the team would have questioned, Superboy, and they would have talked about Superboy, trying to find a situation for him. Now, Mark would have said it's okay, Superboy. Basically, Superboy looking around, being kind of distraught. Now, basically, that's where we're gonna leave it off. Episode 2, and let's move on to episode 3. Now, with episode 3, with the whole entire, thing with basically Megan and the rest of the team joining. Basically, Megan would have been. Oh, sorry, guys. So basically, Megan would have joined the team after the team was given Mount Justice as a base, and basically, their teachers would have been Red Tornado and Black Canary, and basically they would have been told that they're the new cooperative team to go through certain other tasks that the Justice League can't interfere with because they're such a big team or operation. Basically, Superboy would have taken this, and basically Superboy would have been living at the pretty much Mount Justice. Now, basically, then and there, Mark would have had nights over at the Mount Justice and would have gone back and forth to his house, and then and there, unlike weekends, he would have slept over at the Mount Justice, but mostly every other day he would just sleep at his house. So basically, Mark told his parents that he was joining the Young Justice, and basically, Omni-Man saw this as a big no-no because he didn't want Mark to get too attached to humans because, his whole entire plan. But basically, Invincible didn't want to do anything, and Omni-Man didn't want to show his true colors, and they want to offset his son. Basically, him just keeping it, short and quick, basically saying not to get too attached to this team. Now, Invincible said, okay, Mark said, okay, Dad, and basically, Mark would have, joined the Young Justice, and they would have been introduced to Megan. Megan would have looked at them, basically, mainly being very more attracted to Invincible, but this ship being Megan and Invincible. So basically, Megan would have been, flirting with Invincible the first time she ever saw him, basically, them kind of flirting back and forth. Basically, at this point, Eve not really being, a big part of Mark's life, because Eve would was eventually join the Young Justice, and eventually multiple other was it Invincible characters would join the Young Justice. So guys, what type of Young Justice characters, what type of Invincible characters do you think I should introduce in the Young Justice world? Like, I don't know, Rex Explode, or Adam Eve, or something like that. So basically, Mark would have they would have gone to their first type of, pretty much, they would have socialized because, Red Tornado wouldn't have any missions for them. And basically, Mark and the rest of the team or group would have been socializing, and Megan would have shown her bioship. Basically, them being shown her showing her, shape-shifting abilities, and her saying that this is, my abilities. Basically, Robin saying that it's not gonna really fool anybody. Basically, Megan saying it's harder to, mimic boys. Now, basically, Invincible saying, well, I think it's really good. Now, basically, Megan getting kind of blushing by this. Now, basically, they get a distress call by Red Tornado, basically telling them that, it's been some disturbance near Sunnyside Dock. Now they would have gone towards Happy Harbor, and basically would have been, caught off guard by a tornado hitting them. Now, basically, they would have gone to the building, mainly Robin sneaking into the building and fighting Twirler or Twister. Now, they would have, fight them, and Mark would have been not in his hero costume, but guys, I had to do a time jump because my nose started to bleed halfway through the recording, so I had to stop and then deal with that. So I'm come back here a couple minutes after, and I do think I left off near where pretty much they started to fight against Twister. Now basically they were fighting against Twister, and basically Mark would be in an outfit similar to this, just with a red shirt and jeans and black black Nikes or something like that. Basically, Mark started to fight against Twirler or Twister alongside Superboy, as pretty much, Robin started to get folded by Mr. Twister from the beginning. Now, basically, they started to go back and forth, and basically, Superboy and Invincible Sheriff just dogging and jumping Twister. Twister used his abilities to push back Superboy into a couple of crates and started to trade up just blocks with Mark. Mark dodged most of the attacks, but mainly took them like a champ, making Twister's fist crumble a little bit. But Twister was strong enough to throw a big blast of wind, pushing Mark out of the building through a wall. Now, Megan tries to, telepathically communicate with Mark, telling Mark, "Are you okay?" Mark says, "Yeah," and gets back up, basically getting ready to go alongside the other, guys. Now, basically, doing the whole entire, what was it, event, and we just skip a little bit when Mark and basically everybody else was in the building. Superboy still had that whole entire conversation with, Megan not to get in his head and all that other stuff, and also the whole entire thing with the cookies and everything, and basically all that other stuff. Now, basically, they started to go back and forth, and eventually, the team would think that this is Red Tornado, and then they wouldn't try to fight him anymore, saying that he doesn't even trust us to go against an actual threat. And basically, Invincible saying, "I don't think that's Red Tornado." Basically, Robin saying, "What do you think it is, Mark? It's nothing new. Look at it." Now, basically, Mark looks at it closer and is confused because Mark doesn't hear anything, out of the ordinary. And basically just sees that it's, a robot similar to Red Tornado. And Mark comes to the conclusion that he thinks it's Red Tornado as well. So they step back, but actually, it isn't, a Red Tornado drip off. It isn't Red Tornado. It's actually a villain. And basically, Superboy and Invincible fly towards Troller, but them getting shot down. And Invincible getting shot down into the building, and Superboy getting shot into a crater onto the ground. And basically, Mark waking up, coughing up a little bit of blood, just like a drop, not really a lot, and Mark wipes it away off of his, pants. Mark gets up and looking around, and Megan gets back up, saying, telepathically communicating with Mark, "Are you okay?" Mark says, "Yeah," and basically steps down from the ground. Now, Mark walks off, and basically, we get cut to Twirler trying to finish off what he started and trying to take down the team. Now, Mark flies up to the ground, grabbing Twister and throwing him down to the ground and starts to just beat him senseless with his fist. Now, Twister looks closer and closer, and eventually, Mark grabs Twister and starts throwing him around, getting super angry, looking at his friends, seeing them all down to the ground, beaten up and bruised up. Mark grabs Twirler one last time and says, "I'm going to end this now." Grabs Twirler and basically flies all around the area, eventually flying near pretty much the area originally in Canyon where Twirler was taken down. And pretty much Mark flies as hard as he can into the ground, literally crushing Twister into nothing, into little shards of metal, like mulch of some sorts. And pretty much Twister is absolutely destroyed. Now, Twister is completely destroyed. Not even anything left of Twister is left. It's just completely destroyed. Now, Mark stands over the little remnants of, Twister's body and says, "That about does it," and basically flies back over to the rest of the team. Now, Mark's shirt was kind of ripped up, and basically Mark flew down to the ground, pretty much saying, "Everybody, everything's okay." And basically, that's where I'm going to leave it off here. So basically, Red Tornado pretty much scolds the whole team, but Mark looks down to the ground and finds a robotic eye, grabbing it, saying, "Pretty cool." And basically, he grabs some other stuff from the remnants of Twisters, saying these are pretty good souvenirs, and walks off. Now, basically, that's where I'm going to leave it off here, guys. So basically, what happens, everything happens the exact same way, like in... Now, basically, Megan does, get good with, Superboy, basically, to them having a pretty good, being front, becoming slightly closer than slightly closer than friends. No, they eventually, they are getting closer and becoming friends. Basically, Mark, shows off some more of his, pretty much Mark, is told that it wasn't really a good team effort, but saying that he did deal with the threat pretty quickly, but very brutally. Now, basically, the Justice League is kind of worried because sometimes Mark loses his anger or his temper and blasts out in fits of rage, taking on villains and pretty much almost, taking them out completely. Like with Blockbuster and also like, well, with Twirler. And if that was a human being in the suit or if a human being just general, if Mark did go all out on a human being, that would have just been blood, not shards of metal. Basically, Mark would have overheard this, pretty much saying that, I knew it wasn't human because, Megan said it was robotic, like you, pointing to Red Tornado. And basically, they're saying, basically, they tell Mark to just become and control your temper a little better. Mark takes this and actually, looks at it closer and says, okay. Now, basically, Mark goes back home and pretty much goes back to training with his father. Now, basically, they start to train, and that's where I'm gonna leave it off here, guys. So, basically, well, in part three will be basically about, how Mark will handle everything, and I was gonna try to, enhance the whole entire, relationship with Megan and Invincible more in part two. I mean, part three. Now, the next Invincible what if I'm gonna be making, or just not the next what if I'm gonna make in general. The next Invincible what if I'm gonna be making is what if Benton was in Invincible, I think part 2 or part 3. Either one. And also I will be uploading part 4 to what if Shazam was in Invincible. So yeah. So basically in a couple weeks I might just, try to grind on all my Invincible what ifs. But yeah, if you guys want me to continue a certain Invincible what if or to make another certain Invincible what if, and yeah, so the next MC what if I'm going to be making is what if Hancock from the Will Smith movie was in the MCU. Now, it's a request. I don't really want to make it, but I do request, and it's part of my channel because some other what ifers don't really do requests at all, and I just try to be different. So yeah, so see you guys later. Bye, and as always, guys, have a blessed day.